So up on the board, we're going to talk about the NJGPA. There's a few slides that you're going to see that are almost repeats of what you just saw with access, and that really has to do with what the state requirements are for reporting to the board and to the community. So I'll kind of talk a little bit about that as we go. The NJGPA is an assessment that came out in 2022 to mandate that all 11th graders would take a graduation proficiency test. Last year they took it, it was considered a field test though. So those scores technically didn't count, let's say, towards their graduation, but we did report on them to you last year. This year, our 11th graders, our current seniors, took a test last year, which does count towards their graduation. So those are our current 12th graders. They took it in 11th grade. And this test is designed to mimic what you might see on NJSLA. So it aligns to grade 10 standards in ELA, and then in mathematics, it aligns to Algebra 1 and geometry standards. So the state requires us to tell you how many students took the test out of how many students could have taken the test. So when you look at the participation rate, you see 220 out of 222. So we had 220 students in ELA take the test, and we had 219 students in math take the test out of a possible 222. And just as we would say in any testing situation, there are kids that do not take the test for various reasons. If you look at the bottom, it's the district results versus the state results, or in comparison to the state results. So if you look where the blue is, where it's more like Mahwah blue, that's our results. So in ELA, we had 91% of our students pass or be considered graduation ready, versus the state at 80.5. In math, we had 84% pass or be considered graduation ready in comparison to the state at 55%. I'll just leave that there for a few more minutes. The state also requires us to compare year over year. Now, this is a little caveat with this slide. Last year, during the field test, the cutoff was 750. This year, with the test that counts, quote unquote, it is 725. So the state lowered the actual score. So when you look at these scores, although I'm very happy about these scores because they show a great increase from 65 to 91 and from 76 to 84, we do have to remember that next year we wouldn't see these large jumps because you're going to be comparing 725 to 725. As opposed to a 750 to a 725. This is disaggregated data. The state requires us to always report on disaggregated data. And please keep in mind that these are groups of 10 or more. So the N, the amount of students calculated, has to be 10 or more to report. So there are different demographic groups that are not represented here because our actual number of N was below 10. But if you look, we have female, male going across the bottom, special education, economically disadvantaged, Hispanic, Latino, Asian, and white. Again, scores have gone up tremendously.
Dr. Rubino, do
Yes.
you have the number of kids that would have reached the 750 benchmark set for last year, so you're comparing apples to apples more?
No, the state only requires us to look at the
I know that.
previous recording of state scores to state scores. That wouldn't be a score that the state gives us. We would have to go in internally, which we can't report publicly to. We have to report on the state scores.
Can we hold questions till the end? And Dr. Bivini, only so they can come up to the microphone. Otherwise, we can't hear them. Ms. Theodora, if we could just wait till the end. Thank you.
The pictures of the data.
Okay, so this is our math scores. Again, we're looking at last year's score to this year's score in the disaggregated groups, and going across the bottom again, same categories. Here we do see there are two groups that we're going to hone in on in terms of when we talk about interventions. Our special education group and our economically disadvantaged group. The state also requires us to talk to you about what we're doing for these students. So we see these reports and we see these scores, but we also want to say, how can we support these students? And it might be 10 students, 20 students, 30 students, or a whole group of, let's say, all females at 143 students. This breaks down for you for ELA, and the next slide will break down for math, what we do for our current seniors that possibly did not pass with graduation readiness for ELA and for math. The top are general supports. You've heard me talk about these classes before, but we have our CCR classes, we have our AHASA classes, and we also provide time for students to take alternative assessments. So just because the student did not pass the graduation test, there are alternative assessments that they can use to graduate and pass, and those are listed there. If you look below, the state also requires us to look at the subgroups and look at what we can do to target those subgroups. So if you see the subgroups that we talked about before were special education and were economically disadvantaged subgroups. These are some ideas that we have in terms of what we do prior to 11th grade and what we can do after. So not only do we provide all of the interventions from the top, but with our special education students, upon entry in freshman year, we actually look and do a portfolio assessment, and we look at all the data that we have on those students. And we include them in certain courses, like a CCR English, or we co-enroll them, meaning we give them 2 doses of English. We give an English 9, 10, or 11, but we also give a reading course. So those are things that we do preemptively upon entry into freshman year, but then we also provide tutoring and summer support for kids that did not pass the assessment. And the same holds true for mathematics. So the first couple bullets are exactly the same. We provide CCR classes, we have our AHASA classes, and then we also offer alternative assessment options for students that do not pass. And at the bottom, for our subgroups, we provide co-enrollment, meaning I'm going to give you two classes or a double dose of math. We also provide co-teaching models for our students, which is really, really important. And then we actually added this year a course for 12th graders in mathematics. And we provide our tutoring and summer help.